Silent for 1 minute. I request Professor Rocket to. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Chairperson of the Forum of Global Knowledge Sharing, Professor Krishna, Professor Narayanan, Dr. Binu Paul, and all very distinguished friends and teachers who are assembled here today. We are very privileged to have all of you at ISID. So a warm welcome from ISID and on behalf of the organizers, including ICSR and Dr. Richa Sharma will be joining soon. She is somewhere on the traffic. So I think I must begin by saying that this forum for
We call it knowledge forum.
Knowledge forum. Yeah, that better, shorter version. The knowledge forum. I think when it was started 2 decades ago, probably 2 decades or more than
No, it was 2005.
2005. 2005. Yeah. So nearly 2 decades. So when it was started, I think it was the foresight and visionary sort of thinking of Professor Siddharthan that we need a multidisciplinary forum, bringing people who work on innovation from social sciences and real physical sciences. So he was ahead of his time to see through that the technological revolutions that are moving at very fast pace requires a sort of understanding which brings and pools minds from both sides of the spectrum. And one side can never do justice to that. So I think over time, the way it has evolved, I have observed it from a distance. In some of the early conferences, I also was present physically, but I have kept an eye on this as it has evolved, because both Professor Siddharthan and Professor Narayanan, I have been in touch all along my professional career. So this forum is a very important sort of forum to bring together all the researchers on innovation, technology, and related issues, and especially bringing together the social scientists, economists, and policymakers, and the real scientists. I see Professor Ashok Jain, with whom also I have worked a long time ago. So this is, I think, in the current age when the third technological revolution is morphing into the fourth one, the digital revolution. I think one can see how important and a visionary foresight it was on the part of Professor Siddhartha. And so as we live through this world and this age of technology, uh, one sees every day some new innovations coming which affect our lives deeply. And like any technological revolutions of the past, there are opportunities and threats. As Schumpeter called, it is a process of creative destruction. So this creative destruction, again, there is a lot of thinking and discussion about the downsides of this new digital revolution. How many jobs will be replaced or substituted or destroyed? And how many new jobs will be created and of what type? So the gig economy, gig workers, is a new type of new class of workers emerging and expanding very fast. So there are many new issues which are surfacing, but we are also able to see the fruits of this new thing. How life has been made simpler by the Ubers of this world, Google Maps of this world, how the COVID app helped in management of the COVID pandemic we have lived through over the past 3 years. These direct benefit transfers and all. So many of the facilitating innovations are coming to the fore and straight away applied to businesses and productivity enhancing tools and all that. But the downsides in terms of the job losses. So these are very complex issues and they require a lot of in-depth research. Bringing together the both sides of the spectrum is very much desirable to understand the nuance and the implications of that, which can be then considered by the policymakers. So I think this is a very timely, the conference or forum happening today and tomorrow. So I'm sure that in 2 days, 2 days of deliberations and presentations by many young scholars will be very productive. I have no doubt about that. And, I'm sure all of us will be enriched by these discussions. My colleagues in ISIT have been looking forward to hosting of this conference at ISIT premises. And ICTAR has, of course, been supporting ISIT in all its work. So now I'm happy that Dr. Richa Sharma is also with us. So with these words, I want to welcome everyone once again and over to the chairman. Thank you.
Yes, I feel so representative, Dr. Richa Sharma.
Galaxy of intellectuals in true sense. Good morning all, myself Dr. Richa Sharma. And on behalf of ICSSR, I welcome you all to this August gathering and for Knowledge Forum. I was going through the files and I have come across that the type of activities being undertaken, and I since 2006, if I am not wrong. 2005 in fact. And after a little break from 2018-19 onwards, this gathering has again come. There were the times there were more than one or two gathering took place and the conference took place in a 1 year. I expect the same type of engagement of Knowledge Forum in the future discourses as well, and especially during the time when India is heading toward and going to preside as a chair for G20. Lot of things to be done and lot of things are to be done by us. So on behalf of ICSSR, I welcome all the intellectuals from across India. Thank you for choosing ISID, which is one of the best research institute of ICSSR. And along under the patronage of Nagesh sir, I'm very sure that in the future also, along with the Knowledge Forum, we organized something very good about the for the G20 summit as well. There are the two things what I have seen for this conference was a very wonderful blend for technology and economy. But two more things which is to be incorporated for the upcoming discourses would be society and a very straw burst legal framework, because when there is an interplay between economy and technology, it is to be strengthened by a very strong legal mechanism or a policy framework. We expect on behalf of the government that you may please submit us the some policy paper with regard to the policy paper or a policy document collectively, how to strengthen bilateral relations, agreements with the neighboring state of South Asia, and also with the various standard agreements where better consolidated network between technology and economy, covering various themes of your knowledge forum can be covered. So with a few words, I welcome you all to this gathering. And I'm very sure this 2 days of brainstorming will be very beneficial to each and every one of us. I'm looking forward to see the proceedings, and thank you very much for being here. Thank you so much.
Professor Narayan will now give a tour of the sessions. You have a slide?
Yeah. Technology. Thank you, Professor Siddharthan. Professor Siddharthan, Professor Nagesh Kumar, Dr. Sharma, Professor Krishna, and all other distinguished colleagues here. I'm delighted that we are able to assemble back after a gap of almost 3 years. Last time we met was in 2019 October in IIT Madras, and Santosh and his colleagues hosted us there. And we did send the call for paper in January of 2020, and many of us submitted abstract and papers and got them all peer reviewed, even while we were under lockdown due to pandemic. But then we were hoping the situation will improve, but nobody knew the size of the elements in the room. So we went on and on, and then we said, okay, we won't be able to have the conference until we meet. So we did not want to go virtual. Now we are blending technologies, hybrid more, but not really want to be virtual, because knowledge forum is also knowledge sharing. So we thought best way of knowledge sharing is to meet in person. So we've been waiting, and finally we could break the ice, thanks to Professor Nagesh Kumar, that we could meet at ISID and kickstart again. So that becomes the gap between the 14th and the 15th annual conference. But what happened is, I first want to acknowledge all of you for responding when we wrote to you that we plan to have the conference now. So a lot of things would have happened in the last 2 years. And you might have also, because already you all submitted revised paper after incorporating comments and suggestions by the referees. So some of you might have sent it for publication, some of them already have been published. So everyone responded by saying that, look, we have got updated version of the paper. So they went through the process again in the month of October. And then we said, okay, we have got adequate papers to go ahead with the conference. I also want to place on record our sincere appreciation to Professor Ashok Jain and Professor Vinod Das for putting together the economics session. So I want to just give you an idea of what is in store, for discussion today and tomorrow. So we're going to begin. So we're going to begin. That's part of this, the session is a release of the book. The reason why we are releasing this book is also because several parts of the book have actually been presented in the earlier knowledge forum conferences. And Purnima and I
have benefited immensely from the comments and suggestions given by several of you in those conferences. Of course, she'll be talking more about that. So it just got released last month, published by Oxford Press. That's why I thought it'd be appropriate opportunity to showcase the book also here. Okay, on the technical sessions, we the first session is going to be on foreign direct investment. Of course, it's not really FDI in platform economy. We're going to say issues like foreign direct investment and platform economy. And we requested Professor K. Krishna to be chair as well as discussion for the three papers. So three papers that are going to be presented in the session are by Binopal, Rupesh Patnaik, Sumesh, and Kamal Murali's paper on platform economy, small enterprise performance and employment in India. Next, followed by Ruchi Sharma's paper on Ruchi Sharma and Aparna Sharma's paper on innovation strategy of foreign firms and Indian manufacturing industries. And the third one by Shreya Anurakti and myself on FDI clusters, technology and export performance, the pharmaceutical firms in India. So what is actually coming out of this is we have been receiving, and even this time, therefore, number of good papers covering FDI, the various aspects of foreign investment. So we thought, instead of keeping one session, these papers can also be linked to other things. Therefore, we have spread them over a number of things and not simply call it only FDI here. So, for instance, Binu's paper talking about platform economy, Binu et al. Paper. So it's actually the first time we are discussing in large form platform economy. And then, and he's trying to look at the role of small and, small and medium-sized enterprises, performance and employment in India, linking it to platform economy. So that's where we have some interesting insights to learn from. Also, the innovation strategies based on the data of patents, again, which Ruchi has been working on for a long time on this. So this is one of the more recent work that she undertook, and I happen to be one of the referees for the project. It's an excellent work that they carried out, Ruchi and Aparna. So I thought it would also be ideal to, have better audience in the knowledge forum for this. And they go into the details of patenting system and how to reconsider the patents in terms of various parameters. So that's something that will come up clearly here. And third one is by Shreya and me, where we are looking at whether co-location matters. So when you look at, especially in terms of spillover, economic spillover learnings, so we find that, it does seem to be matter for even pharmaceutical sector, which are export oriented. So that's why we look at the north, west, east, south within India, and co-location of multinationals and the local firms in the same cluster is actually helping the local firms. So that's one of the results that we are getting in here. The next session will be chaired by Professor Malti Dharaswamy. Thank you for traveling all the way from Chennai today morning. So there will be three papers being presented here. Professor Goldar, along with Amrita Goldar and Farida, will be presenting on impacts of cyclones on the Indian manufacturing firms in India. We have Prantik Bakshi and Santosh Sahu presenting on Pigu and Porter. Are they perfect complements? Again, manufacturing sector. And third one is by Sarita Bhatt on determinants of CSR investments on technology initiatives in India. Now, on the environmental CSR issue, the issues covered are, vast, but I just put together a couple of points here. So how do firms cope with severity of cyclones? I mean, this is something that, several of us think about and we say, it's very difficult to assess. As always, reach from the front and tells us how exactly we can go about doing it using the unit level data of ASI. And then how exactly they're coping with it. So given that India has a huge challenge with respect to cyclones, and also the manufacturing sector, certain parts of India definitely, and the manufacturing sector are directly affected by it, and keeping in mind the SDGs to which we have signed in 2015. So the issues discussed are very vital policy implications. And again, very interesting when I was looking at this paper by Santosh and Prantik, I was saying, so how are they comparing Pigu and Porter? So I'll keep that as a secret for all of you because they are very interesting results. And this is so we've read them separately. We talk about Pilgrian tax, then we talk about Porter's diamond. How are they coming to combine these two people who are very different parties? We'll wait and see how exactly, and they're trying to see the impact of it in Indian manufacturing firms. Interesting results they have, analysis to share. And of course, Savita has come up with a very new idea. Everybody's talking about CSR, mandatory CSR spending and all that. But can they actually be channelizing the CSR for technology incubating companies? People talk about CSR money spent on philanthropies. But can it also be channelized to spend on technology? Again, she coming from Kinetic School of share very interesting stories to share with us. Then we have another rich session today, later today by chaired by Professor V.L. Pandit. Now, this will be 3 papers presented here. Dr. Kumera is here. Sundara Kumera, Subhash, and Jiju. Our family forms innovative and moderating effects of insider or family on institutional leadership, etc. So, how the family form different from the non-family run enterprises? Very interesting analysis that carried out. And we have Dr. Lal and Shubham Pal on productivity, innovation, and knowledge capital, which is actually cross-country analysis. So, how exactly they're comparing in terms of although the knowledge capital or expenditure innovation is actually influencing productivity through a cross-country analysis. Very interesting set of analysis that are carried out. And we have Professor Devinathan, who will be talking about knowledge and global inequality. He's actually bringing us back to the theories of monopoly and monopoly factors. And tomorrow morning, we have a full session on econophysics. Professor Jain and Professor Sunal Das have put this session together. We have requested Professor Jain to chair. So we have 5 papers to be presented here. So it's really growing. Econophysics when it started, then it was actually growing in the college interaction. So we have complexity analysis of synthetic financial model data with multi-scale permutation entropy by Dr. Jain and Dr. Das. Then we have Anindya Bhattacharjee also on impact of COVID-19 on the Indian stock market. We talk about COVID-19 impact on which we are talking about stock market with respect to market efficiency. And we have dynamic model of non-linear pricing. And we have, the talked about forecasting and regeneration of behavior of a time delayed financial system using ECO state network. And we have Samesh Das on dynamics of chaos and employment. So when I was looking at these papers, I only wanted to share some points of this. So all of them are economics data analyzed using methodology developed in physics. So that's something that we see a marriage between 2 disciplines. But then when you look at marriage between 2 disciplines, I'm reminded of what you read about Jan Timberwell, but also teachers, great Professor Shukma Chakravarti. Because whenever we read development planning Indian experience, the first chapter itself, he talks about theories of physics and relevance to economic. And when I teach environmental economics, I remember that we first start with 2 laws of thermodynamics. So that's what we are familiar with. But again, most interesting is we all know 1969. For having developed and applied dynamic model for analysis of economic processes. So that's what makes it unique. And you see a flare of Ramadan when we interact with the physicist here. Of course, the analysis and results are very interesting points for discussion as well as policy implications. And we have 2 more sessions after that, one on industry, chaired by Professor Nagesh Kumar. 2 papers, and scholars coming from different parts of the country, very well. I mean, they're really very interesting papers. Anurag has papers on MNC application and their export performance in the motor vehicle industry in India. It's a new look into the entire process of technology export, MNC application export relationship. And we have Smriti Ranjan Sahu talking about determinants of export in boom and bust, evidence of the Indian electronic industry. What happens when there's a boom and also when there's a bust? So how exactly this is happening there is interesting study there. And the final technical session will be on R&D and innovation, chaired by Professor Golda. So we have 2 papers likely to be presented there. One by Sanjay Kumar Mali from ISIT itself on technology transfer from the FDI to local firms in manufacturing. The process of transfer, determinants of it is discussed at that. And we have Twin Shubaragiri from RIS, who will be talking about ICT and firm performance in the informal sector enterprise. So that's also getting covered in the process here. So we are covering informal sector activities. So as all of us know, technological firms and industries in India have been a major debate in innovation literature. And they have spent very little in comparison to the counterparts of recent countries or other emerging economies. But the findings in this paper throw open new issues for us. So again, we are seeing challenges as well as opportunities. And we are going to have the very interesting finish to the conference in the form of panel discussion. So after discussing with Mr. Nagesh Kumar, we titled the panel discussion. Also, we consulted other people. Happy to say that Professor Sumatra is already here with us, and Dr. Sharma said he would join a little later today, and Mr. Ashwini Bhatt is also here from Choice Solutions. So the expected, the theme that we have thrown open to discuss, we are looking for Hashim to be sharing this. So we have Industry 4.0, what Nagesh has been working on of late, sustainability and developing countries, opportunities and challenges. That's what we exactly going to have a panel discussion. So therefore, to sum up, I've only attempted to provide you a prelude in the words of Wordsworth. A prelude to what is in store in discussion, for discussion and deliberation to the next 2 days, today and tomorrow. The rich food for thought will definitely be there. We can definitely look forward to that. And all the papers have tremendous potential for publications and enrichment of literature in specified fields of research. So we are looking forward to an excellent interaction today and tomorrow. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for giving a bird's eye view of what to look forward. I think people a lot of hunger to digest this bird's eye view. Knowledge forum, for those who have not been attending earlier or come for the first time, is an interdisciplinary forum, which is a kind of an interface between science, technology, and economy. Economists have been working on technology creation and transfer, knowing nothing about technology at all. They only find it out through productivity statistics. Technologies create technology which has no economic environment, so it fails. So there should be a forum where we should meet and discuss. It is a virtual forum, but once in a year we meet mainly to exchange and discuss. So all the papers here are multidisciplinary, and they are all of a good standard because they are strict refereeing. I tell the referees only one thing: is this paper publishable in a standard journal? If not, don't accept it. It has to be publishable in a standard journal, and anybody can become member of the Knowledge Forum, but only one condition: they should have published their research findings in a journal which is included in the citation index, social sciences citation index or science citation index. If it is not, you have to work for it and get it published. That is the only requirement. And all our papers, because of this strict criteria, are of a good standard. Many of them are published in good journals, and some of them are published in our own conference volumes, published by either Rutledge or by Springer. And they are also of a good standard. I'll tell you why. Springer, editor from Singapore, was a bit concerned why there is so much of downloading of Knowledge Forum papers, because downloading is not free for Springer, you have to pay for it. And why so many people are paying and downloading, and then Springer did a survey and found out several American universities have used our Knowledge Forum volumes as reference books. And that is why everybody is downloading. It indicates professional recognition of our papers. It also indicates our strict refereeing of our papers. Unless we strictly referee, you won't get professional recognition. So we are happy that several universities all over the world are using our edited volumes published by Springer as reference books in their university things. So we are quite, and other papers are also published in good journals. In our website, if you go to communication, there is a thing on communication which gives you the list of papers presented in the Knowledge Forum, published in international journals. Therefore, there are some long list actually. So that list you can see, just go into the communications. Yeah. Books, it will come under the books. Now, several of the papers presented in Knowledge Forum, they have also appeared as books. and the one we are releasing today, most of the chapters they have already presented the knowledge forum things, but they want to make it in one book rather than in different journals. And so that has come out, and that is also coming out. So it's a very important thing. But the main thing is quality. There should be no compromise on quality. It is also because we emphasize quality, it's a very non-hierarchical forum. There is no hierarchy in the knowledge forum. Totally non-hierarchical. We respect good knowledge creation, whoever it is. It doesn't go by designations at all. We are one forum which don't go by designations. We go, that's why even young PhD scholars are given as much importance as very senior professors. So that is another feature of the forum which we don't want to compromise. So this is something which is very important. And the third important feature of our forum is we have no employees. Our wages and salary bill is zero. Everybody here is a voluntary worker. All of us are voluntary workers. The only expenditure we have is expenditure on conferences. There is no other expenditure. And for expenditure on conferences for young PhD scholars and young assistant professors who cannot fund their travel, we fund their travel instead. Senior people, their own organizations here. But if the senior people say we don't have, then we fund. But it is mainly for young scholars. We fund this travel. It's a non-hierarchical forum, and many people have benefited by the non-hierarchical. So we want to give this, promote these three cultures. Non-hierarchical is one culture. Emphasis on publication in good journals. That is second culture. It's not that I say you are great, you say you are great. It's not that. They have to go through this strict referee of these journals and published in journals which are in a citation index. I tell you, it is not that easy. Published in citation index journals. Nagesh knows he has published a lot in citation index journals. But we should make sure all our institutions also encourage publication in citation index journals, rather than in journals which they think is great. That's a big difference. So with this, we now go to the presentation of the book.
First release and then spoke, you want to present the book. You want presentation first or release?
Let's present it.
We stop in, we have a lot of time there. We have a lot of time. 10 o'clock will be stop. 11.
So-
Very good.
Thank you to this august audience, and I think Professor Siddhartha and Mr. Nagesh, Mr. Narayanan have given the context of this forum and what it stands for, and feel deeply privileged to be able to share this book with all of you here today. Regional Economic Diversity, Lessons from an Emergent India. A lot of you have been part of this in many different ways, which is why I think being able to talk about this here means a lot to me also personally. In the 2015 Knowledge Forum conference at NIAS, that was where one of the first papers from this I had the opportunity to present. And I don't know if Dr. Pandit remembers, he was the chair of the session where I presented. And he had given me his comments both during and after the session as well about things to look at. And post that, Professor K.L. Krishna had taken me aside and given some different thoughts and ideas, and also felt that this is an interesting and emerging area about how regional economy can be invigorated and why it is important. And so finally, so that was 2015. We are now in 2022. Some of these things take time to cook and get refined. And for me, there is a feeling of coming full circle to be able to have it in this physical form now finally. And Professor KLK has been gracious to give us the foreword for this book. When we reached out to him, he very readily agreed, and Uh, I think the fact that, you know what, Professor Siddharthan was also just saying, the fact that ideas like these go through constant processes of refinement is very important for them to get to a point where they're really cooked and ready for the world outside. And a lot of your works, Bhatt and Siddharthan, Goldar, 1986, all of those citations are part of this book. Professor Arup Mitra is here. He was the external reviewer of my PhD thesis and has himself published a lot on agglomeration. And he was one of the first people who, on my PhD defense, after that, had said, Purnima, this has the makings of a book. You should, think about it. And to me, it felt like someone who's definitely done far more literature review on the subject that I could ever do, to say that it has something new to say. Things like these are a shot in the arm, which tell you that, you're on track and there's something to what you're trying to do. So a big thank you to, all of these people here on this forum who've, been part of this journey. So now, once the book has been out, we've had some interesting initial reviews coming in. Amitabh Kant had shared about how, from a G20 and from a national policy perspective, some of this is important. Professor TCA Anand, who has also been the Chief Statistician of India, we've looked at NSS data as one of the core tenets of this research. And so his views on this are very valuable. I did mention Professor Mitra. Police Medco is with Emory University abroad, and has also been sharing that people interested in India should be looking at these kind of questions, because the regional narrative of India is something not many people have gone deep into. Our Gopal Krishnan, he is a director at Tata Sons. He currently also is a very prolific writer from a business writing perspective. And we've been talking about how it makes sense even for business to be looking at what is happening from an innovation industry perspective for the regional economy. And many of you in Delhi University will be familiar with Dr. Meenakshi Gopinath, who is also my principal from LSR. And so having some of these people feel that this is valuable gives us a shot in the arm to, put this work out there. We hope that there is a wider reading and reception to some of the ideas that we are trying to put together. So let me walk you through a little bit about what is the core premise of this book? What is it that we are trying to say? So fundamentally, a large part of our narrative has been on both development and the industry side, has been about how we are doing as a country, how different countries have certain areas of competitive advantage, where is everybody going to deliver on SDGs. That narrative is largely a country or an inter-country narrative. It does come down to some level at a state level where we say, how is Maharashtra doing? How is Gujarat? What is happening at that level of administrative decision making? Our premise is that what is happening at the sub-state level is actually even more critical, because the national and the state level picture tends to mask the huge level of variety and diversity and variation happening at the regional level. And possibly there are things we need to unlock at the regional level to be able to, hit some of those targets or some of those levels of both growth and equity that as a country we in India hope to achieve, but we are also hoping that there are learnings for other developing countries that are in similar, which have this kind of regional variety to think about it. So we look at the fact that the region's ability to experience growth is determined by two main things. One is their ability to attract industry or the ability to attract people. Often both are interconnected. And we've looked at a lot of literature that talks about what drives location choice of industry, what drives location choice of individuals, households. And in that journey, came across choices of when a region is growing, is there a lot of specialization in the kind of economic activity that they are choosing to do, which goes with the growth poles hypothesis, choose one or two areas of competitive advantage, and that is the key lever, which is what Marshall propagated. And on the other side, we have diversification, where Chinitz and Jacobs have said a lot about co-location of different kinds of firms and different kinds of economic activity together resulting in urbanization economies. So we've tried to go deep into some of these questions and look at where does India stand? What does data in the Indian context tell us? We've used census and NSS data extensively, as well as some data sets from the RBI. And our broader premise is that the whole concept of agglomeration affects many things: concentration of firms, of flows of labor, flows of capital, and therefore the larger growth narratives of how we do on other indices. The analytical framework that one is looked at here is to look at agglomeration in the context of, yes, we know market access, localization, inter-industry linkages, but we particularly focus more on the aspect of diversification, because the data throws up the fact that in India, for some reason, regional diversity of economic activity continuously comes up as a very significant variable. So we've gone deeper into that and looked at two primary dimensions. One being, how is the region performing in terms of economic structure? So descriptively, if we looked at it, what is the degree of diversification of economic activity? And when I say region here, I'm talking the NSS region. So this is that sub-state. We've looked at 75 to 85 regions, India as a collective of these regions. And how does each region look like in terms of economic structure, sectoral shares of employment? What is the degree of urbanization, size, population, some of these? So all of these come into the broad basket of things which impact economic structure. And then we look at another angle, which is levels of access. So and three angles here: access to capital, access to labor, and access to markets. So these being some of the parameters where we felt that they are significant drivers of the regional economy, but also there are some where we were able to get data. There are other institutional factors which we did identify, but in the absence of very regular and like-to-like mapping, the capability to do that. But we've looked at some of these dimensions, and some of them are interconnected. So we've tried to tease out those linkages as well. Moving on. So to give you a flavor of what's inside the book, we've started with this is our chapter plan. Yes. So we've looked at why is this important to go beyond the state, to go deeper. What are some of the spatial dimensions? I already spoke about things like economic diversity. Output at the regional level is something we've tried to compute for the first time, and look at what kind of regional clusters get. Yes, we can come to the map. We've tried to also visually give the readers a flavor of what do some of these things mean. And one of our findings also is that different regions sitting within states are actually sometimes more similar to regions in other states than even within regions within their own state. And we've tried to look at what some of these groupings look like. We've classified them as these regions as growth hubs, diversified, moderate, acute, ranging from what seems to be having many things working for them, and which are the ones like agrarian and acute, which we need a lot of policy action. So in summary, we are reaffirming the role of the region as a homogeneous unit. We're going to build a case about how NSS data is probably the NSS framework is probably something which at an India level, we should have most data sets at least come into that level of granularity. If we can do district and villages, that is even better. But at least that is something which our very great minds have thought about these frameworks, prepared the sampling, and made it representative. So can at least all our Indian data sets be representative at the NSS region level? That's one case. Use that level of detailing for policy, and to build interventions which can also look at, so urbanization being one thing we actively look at, what needs to happen for the non-million plus cities is another angle that we try to tease out. I will stop right here, and yes, I think we will, I would also like to request, we'll release the book, and we request Professor K. Krishna, Mr. Anup Batra, and Mr. Parthu Mukhopadhyay, who are subject matter experts in this area and who thought about this, post our release, to share a few words. Thank you.
Yeah,
Arthur, they will speak on the book. Arthur,
Ashok with his beard now.
And while we don't have copies for everybody, we have a little bit.
You keep on.
Arup,
For release.
no, Arup is also coming for the photograph. He looks, every year he grows younger, right?
We are waiting for it.
Sir. Yes, please.
Yeah, sir. Purnima, stand.
Sir, you might just hold it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
sir.
No, with your face should be. Yeah, I have to. Purnima.
Yes.
Purnima.
I have.
One second, please, ready, sir? Ready.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. Both. Thank you.
Sir, you can go to the chair and say a few words about. One second.
I would like to pay my rich compliments to Purnima and Narayanan for bringing out this book. I had a quick glance at it last night, spending about 1 hour. The origin of this book was a presentation by Purnima at a Knowledge Forum conference. And I was a discussant. I spent considerable time trying to understand what her presentation was about. After about 2 days or so, I told her it is excellent beginning, but much work remains to be done. And for the work to become publishable, I think she took the trouble of spending the last 2-3 years on following up my suggestion and produced an excellent volume on regional economy diversity. This is a very important issue in the Indian economy, given the large economy and 35 states. And I think, of course, she goes beyond the states. At the subnational level, she goes to NSS regions and studies the problem at the NSS regions for 2 years, 2004-05 and 2011-12. And she studies the trends and so on. It is, I think, mind-boggling in terms of what she has contributed in association with Narayanan. I think, as you probably all know, Purnima was Narayanan's student, and I think she got a lot of encouragement from Narayanan. Of course, Narayanan was my student.
But now we have 4G. Rakshi sitting there, he's 4G because he is a Santosh student.
Oh,
Should be a 4G.
Ritesh, of course, was my student in JNU, and now he is here. He is coordinating this conference. I'm extremely happy. So, of course, I took the trouble of Shreyasi and traveling from Delhi to Bangalore to Delhi. I think she was very helpful. I could have come myself, but her company was very useful. And I must also pay my compliments to another student of mine, Nagesh Kumar. I think, so in fact, he entered this field of FDI and so on at my suggestion, because he was looking for a topic for his MPhil thesis. I said, this is the topic which has a lot of promise, and he took my suggestion seriously. And of course, when it came to PhD, I had too many students. I said, you don't depend on me, you look for somebody else. So, Kulin Nayak, I think, supervised his PhD thesis. I am extremely happy to be at this conference, and I have been attending all the conferences. And I think again, I must say, the way the conference is organized is very unique. I attend also the Indian Economic Society conferences. There, of course, about 200 people attend, and the participants don't get enough time to hear. Every paper gets enough time for presentation and discussion. That is the uniqueness of this knowledge forum. I must again, of course, Siddharthan was not directly my student, but of course he used to be.
Virtual student.
So I'm very proud of Siddharthan for organizing the Knowledge Forum for the last 17 years.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I am very happy.
Would invite Professor Arup Mitra to say a few words.
Thank you, Purnima. Incidentally, I was the examiner of Purnima's work and also later an external reviewer for the manuscript. It was a great privilege for me to go through the work. She has gone beyond the standard agglomeration framework, and a number of socioeconomic indicators she has referred to. And very enthusiastically, she carried out all our critical comments and worked very hard over the last 2-3 years to bring the book to this shape. I really congratulate her from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure that it will be a major contribution to the field of knowledge and literature in economics. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Siddharthan and Radan and Purnima for asking me. It's fascinating because the last time actually I looked at this seriously was almost close to the time I first met Purnima, which is about the time that the book started. So it's a long history. And the only thing I actually formally did on industry-related work was with Marvel and way back in 2007. But similarly then, I have 4 kind of lessons. Purnima was kind enough to provide me a copy of the book, and I enjoyed reading it. And based on my work recently on urban issues, I have 4 sort of lessons I would recommend to people who are working on this and might be of some use in it. The first issue is they have a nice measure of diversity, and they sort of try to estimate what is an optimal level of diversity and where does India's sort of region sort of stand in that particular process. And what they find is that India is still sort of, I'm being a little loose here with my description, but is sort of under diversified. We could also say over concentrated because fundamentally most of our regions are below. Most of our regions are below the level of optimal diversity that they sort of estimate. So that's one of the issues. And in the context of policy, therefore, when we look at initiatives like one district, one product, we need to sort of look at that a little bit more carefully as to whether you think of that one district, one product as an anchor store in a mall, or you think of that as standalone. Because the first, it might be a sensible way of looking at it, but because you need that diversity if you want that to grow, or the second is more of an issue of where you're looking at. The second type may not be the kind of strategy. So the first point that I would like to make. The second, as Arup mentioned, it looks at agglomeration in a very interesting manner. And I mean, especially nice to find from the kind of work they do that smaller agglomerations matter a lot.
The issue here, I think, is important in the context of urban studies, is what is, in some sense, big city. We in India, because we have so many large cities, tend to think of big cities as 5-10 million plus places. But if you look at Europe, for instance, you have very few cities who are anywhere near that size. So what therefore is the size of an agglomeration that actually permit a great deal of diversity? And you might find therefore that it's much smaller than we think it was, which also means that we have many more potential growth engines than we think we have. And consequently, you might, one of the interesting findings here is precisely that India may actually have many more engines than we think, and therefore, if all of them were to function and be supported rather than only a few of them, as is currently they're focused largely on large metros, I think that would be an interesting part of the story. In that context, I think what's important is the investment that India has made in transportation, and especially the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, the rural roads program. And I think what they have this nice concept of borrowed diversity and borrowed infrastructure, where it's sort of looking at structures and places, and you're able to sort of see that concept play out as you have with more transportation. It's easier for networks and linkages to build out across the firms. So geographical size is different now than it was before, because the time size has collapsed considerably. That's right. So which metric you're using to measure distance is important, whether it's the metric of actual geographical distance or metric of time travel. And once you change metrics of measurement, you might come up with different things. And that is, I think, and they focus a lot on transport, and I think that's a big learning for us. We focus very little on transport in this country, both freight and passenger, and we need to think about much more on that. Now, recently started with the logistics story in the Ministry of Commerce, but that's still a relatively nascent thing, and we definitely need to focus more attention. And finally, I think what's important is the issue of the quality of the labor force. They have a measure of skill, which is in the higher end, but even at one of the really good things that has happened now, if I look at what China was in 1980s when their industrial revolution started, almost every Chinese at that point in time had spent 9 years sitting inside a classroom. Whether the person learned anything or didn't learn anything is a second question. We have the same issues here, where people who sit inside classrooms and many of them, I definitely would be guilty of that in many of the classrooms I've sat in. But the structure is you had a labor force which had a certain kind of structure of education. India now, as the cohort that are entering the labor forces now, a very large proportion of them are essentially people of fish. If you're looking at the cohort of the anywhere under 25s that are in the labor force, they're substantially people who have finished school. And that changes the dynamic of what is possible in various kinds of industries and processes, especially now as the technology component of industry. And so if you're looking at the three major kinds of issues that they've put together, access to finance and access to labor, they used to be in the earlier space in access to power, and that has sort of declined a lot in and with the labor story, I think we have the ability to make this a much more broad-based and inclusive growth process that we have had. With those words, thank you again. It was wonderful reading the book, and congratulations for sort of bringing it, putting it all together and making it actually happen as Professor Krishna said. It's really nice to see you.
It's difficult to describe your book in 10 minutes, but Purnima did it. So congratulations for keeping your time. Regarding others volunteering to work for Knowledge Forum without any financial expectations, I must mention that our website is being maintained by eSocial Sciences, and I told e-social sciences editor Padma Prakash, who is also director, that we can pay for this maintaining website. She said, don't be silly. None of you are taking any honorarium. What should we take? So it is maintained free. So we depend on scholars and poor scholars to help us to grow and scholarship to grow in this country. Thank you very much. And now Professor Binu Pal, who is the treasurer for the Knowledge Forum. He is also the Pro Vice Chancellor of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Will give a vote of thanks.
Thank you. Professor Siddharthan, Professor Nagesh, Dr. Richa, Professor Narayanan, Dr. Purnima. The forum, its annual conference has been an innovative platform and thought sharing, idea sharing platform for generations. It's a culmination of unpaid, what is it, free voluntary work by a collective. I've been here, I was here 14 years ago, the same venue.
Yeah.
ISA.
Ashwin was the director.
8. And that's the journey, uninterrupted. Of course, interrupted by the virus. But then we overcame. That's a massive success. On behalf of the Knowledge Forum, I thank each and every stakeholder, including institutions, who have been supporting us steadfastly. In the past, for example, Tata Trust, ICSSR, and I think RBI doesn't want acknowledgement.
TIFAC also helped.
TIFAC, Department of Science and Technology, and several universities, length and breadth of India across. I think we look forward to further support. Once again, we thank everyone here, budding scholars, seasoned scholars, everyone, irrespective of hierarchy, no hierarchy. So it's great gratitude, and we thank each other and thank every stakeholder and institutional support that has been bestowed to us. Thank you. And foremost, ISAD had a major task cut out, and the institution did a massive work, very creatively, and it deserves a special appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you. We break for tea.
Shall we have a group photo? We can do that.
And
We
we assemble
can
again.
have a photograph here and then.
We can have 11:30. We assemble one thing. We started 10 minutes late. We also only ended 10 minutes late. So half an hour is